to Meet the PI, presented by Animal Behavior Live. In this podcast, we sit down with leading researchers to explore their research journey, the challenge they faced, and advice for the next generation.
So welcome to our second episode of Animal Behavior Live Meet the PI podcast. As I already said in the first episode, we'll shine a spotlight on eminent researcher of the field of animal behavior. And the idea is kind of like discuss more beyond the research and try to understand a bit the life of researcher themselves, like how they build their career, like maybe if they got some issue along the way, and try to have a little bit of feedback based on that. We'll restart to present all of us. So I'm Alexis Buatois. I'm researcher scientist at IAVAG in Switzerland, and I'm working on ecotoxicology and learning and memory on zebrafish. And today I will be joined with two of my Animal Behavior Life colleagues, David McCluskey, who is retired and studying environmental science and in UK, and Laure Cochard, postdoctoral researcher at CNRS in France, working on cognitive ecology in birds. So hi, guys. And so for this second event, we are very pleased to welcome Dr. Floria Mora-Kepfer Uy. So welcome, Floria, and thanks to participate to this second session of Meet the PI. Floria, you are assistant professor at the University of Rochester, and in your lab, the Trop Bio Lab, you and your team, you are investigating how genes, epigenetic and environmental factors work together to shape phenotypic plasticity. And you focus on social wasp, insects that can flexibly adjust their behavior depending on their environment, striking example of biological plasticity. And so by uncovering these mechanisms, you shed light on the foundation of adaptability in nature with insight that could influence evolutionary biology, conservation, and even agriculture. So we know that you've studied in Costa Rica, and so that will bring us to our first question. We also know that you are leading a lab now in the United States. And so maybe you could tell us a little bit more about your background and so how you passed from Costa Rica to United States, what were the steps behind this?
Yes, of course. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really thrilled to be able to participate in this wonderful initiative. I specifically love that it's accessible for people around the world. That's extremely attractive. So I really appreciate your initiative and effort. Yes, I am originally from Costa Rica in Central America, which we have amazing nature. So I was very lucky to grow up with nature that way, which was inspiring, and it stood out to me. I've liked insects since I was very young, and I got to experience a lot of insects. And I think my background would be that I was always attracted to animals overall and behavior. That was something that stood out to me as a child. And then when it was time to decide what path to take towards the university, at first I thought I was going to be a veterinarian. I kind of confused my love for animals with kind of research. And I was very lucky to start a bachelor's degree at the University of Costa Rica. And we had fantastic entomology professors. So that's where I started to get immersed more formally into learning how to identify insects, their adaptations, their behavior, and all of the good things that we like, hopefully, from insects. And then I was very fascinated by two aspects. One was social behavior, and the other one was how parasites or parasitoids can manipulate other insects, and they can manipulate behavior and physiology. So I did a master's degree at the University of Costa Rica in these parasitoids. And then the next step was I wanted a career in academia, but at the time Costa Rica didn't have a PhD program. So that's when the hard decision came to move abroad, which is always hard because you have to reroute yourself to do my doctoral studies in behavioral ecology at the University of Miami. So that's roughly how it all started.
Okay, thanks a lot.
What was the attraction of parasitoids and wasps in particular? It's not a sort of commonly studied area.
Well, One part of the answer would be that I am extremely attracted to questions that don't have many answers. I tend to like things that are unexplored. That's a natural characteristic of mine that I've always had. And the other one was that the more I've thought about this, it seems that parasites and parasitoids are sort of the true biohackers. They're kind of, and in a way, they're also evolutionist neurobiologists. They have found ways to hack into the systems and manipulate others. And to me, that was a fascinating mix of animal behavior and trying to understand mechanisms underlying animal behavior too, and manipulation.
So you talk about a very good professor you had at the University of Costa Rica. Would you say that you were influenced by this professor for your study model and things like this?
Absolutely. I
Absolutely.
actually had two professors that I really I have a lot of gratitude towards them. They were both professors from the United States, but they became fully immersed and decided to live in Costa Rica and teach in Spanish. So it was a great mix of advice in my own comfort zone and to get to know insects from physiology, function, behavior, learning to identify them. And since they had come from the United States, they had feedback about what a career and a PhD outside of Costa Rica would be. They were very generous and kind with my lots of questions, with their time, and with, dealing with someone that wasn't exactly sure what path to take at the time. And I have a lot of gratitude and I owe a lot to them.
Do you understand directly arriving in United States that you will make your full career there, or behind you always had somehow the dream that maybe you will be able to come back to Costa Rica to kind of install yourself as a researcher?
I think you hit exactly the conundrum that many of us that migrate towards our scientific pursuits have to figure out at some point. My idea was to go back to Costa
Yeah, okay.
Rica.
Yeah.
It turns out that at the time there weren't many possibilities to do research back in Costa Rica. Not many of us at the time left Costa Rica to do a PhD, but there weren't many positions available at the universities. And then I also met my significant other in the United States. So life kind of took me in that direction. So sometimes I kind of do feel sad that I am a Costa Rican that doesn't do research in Costa Rica right now, but I'm hopeful that that is something that we can tackle soon and start to go back home for certain projects. That's one of the sort of life goals I still have, and I hope that I can achieve.
But maybe like you have been able to also build in some collaboration with Costa Rican laboratory in order to sort of keep a fit in there and maybe have less frustration not to not run your research there, right?
Yes, actually, you'd be surprised. I don't have that many connections with Costa Rica other than informal ones. I don't have collaborations, but I have been, just because Costa Rica is a very small country and there's only a few of us working with social insects right now, and I hope that's going to start to change. There's more and more people, becoming interested in pursuing scientific careers now, and more accessibility to which was important at the time. But I've been incredibly lucky that I've had the chance to interact, collaborate, and mentor scientists from Latin America. So I've had trainees from Brazil in my lab. I have trainees from Puerto Rico, from Mexico, recently from Argentina. So we've been able to establish strong collaborations with Latin America. So, but yes, I need to get these Costa Ricans in touch right now.
Yeah, it's like master students coming from Costa Rica and the other countries. Like you can have them for a few months maybe to exchange or things like this.
Oh, absolutely. And I would be very open
Chips.
to that.
Yeah.
There's also, this is something that you're going to find interesting. So Saurina Amador, which is one of the other plenary speakers, she's one of the other few Costa Ricans that study social insects now, and she's a good friend. So it's been
Okay.
amazing. We don't collaborate formally, but we're friends. And I was thrilled to hear what are the chances that in a small country of 5 million people, you have two plenary speakers from the same country. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, that's funny.
It is indeed. I mean, yeah, like I guess that we will be able to ask her a question about that actually, like if she realized.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Like you're looking at your CV, it seems very easy and straightforward, like your career. But I'm asking myself, like, was it really easy, especially as a woman in science? Because like usually it's not that easy. Yeah.
It's been a challenge. It's been a strong challenge. I have to say, part of it is circumstantial, but it hasn't been easy at all. At the time, there weren't that many people, at least from my country, moving to the United States, so you really didn't know what the expectations were for a PhD. Also, as an immigrant, in certain places there are opportunities that are restricted to,
Sure.
they're not accessible for international students, and I was stuck in that position for a while. So my trajectory has been very non-traditional because after my PhD I had the opportunity of a visa extension, but it was a time where the United States was undergoing a market crisis and the economy wasn't good. So I pivoted, which I like, into a teaching career for a while because that was the only opportunity that was available to me at the time. So I didn't have the chance to do a PhD like some of my other peers. And then it was after a couple of years where I just kind of have wanting to just pursue a career in research and also, of course, teaching, that I had to move to the University of Cornell, where a friend generously offered me a position as a research associate. And that's where I was able to jumpstart my research again. But I had to live away from my spouse for 2 years to do this. Yeah.
Crazy.
So yeah, it hasn't been as a traditional or a straight line trajectory compared to other researchers, I would say.
But it's good to know that we can still do something else and try to continue in academia in the same, because sometimes you just don't have the opportunity and you need to find another job, and sometimes we just say, okay, it's too late, I will not be able to do something, but you were able. So it's a good example.
But it's interesting because actually we had Amir Patel last week, who also did not start really in academia, and like somehow you have a bit of the same profile because he was in South Africa and just moved to Europe and then installed himself as a researcher. And he was telling that for him culturally sometimes it was also a little bit complex, this gap between coming from South Africa to arriving in Europe, like regarding grant or this type of thing, that sometimes the amount seems low for a European person, but actually for someone coming from South Africa was very high. And I was wondering like how it was for you, this actually cultural gap when you actually moved from Costa Rica to United States.
I think I had some, within my specific circumstances, I had one advantage, which is that first, anybody that studies animal behavior, part of our job is to be creative because behavioral questions require a lot of effort and creativity and troubleshooting, right? We have to problem solve sometimes when things aren't going our way. We can't control the weather, or sometimes we have unexpected things happen in our research. So I think that helped me be plastic, if I should use some jargony term that we also use in research, to be able to take advantage of whatever I had to make it work. The other thing is that coming from Latin America, perhaps we were already used to not having that many resources at the time to begin with. So whenever you had an opportunity, you would just kind of jump at it and make what you could out of it. So within these circumstances, if one is creative, I think there are ways to at least temporarily be able to solve some of these challenges and be able to overcome some of them. And I think now there's a lot more awareness of people's different circumstances, which at the time, I'm going to sound really old, but at the time there wasn't as much awareness. And I think with that and how the community is growing towards solutions, I think there is a better chance of being able to maybe address some of these gaps that some researchers might have felt, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, it does. But then actually like to follow up on this, like if you had any advice to give to any student who are now, for instance, in Global South and planning to just go make research, United States or Europe, like what will be the main advice that you would have to give at the moment?
You know, it's interesting. I was actually thinking about this these days, and I think there's a couple things that are important. The first one is the more information we have, the better positioned we are to make decisions. So becoming connected, networking, these international platforms are really important to get to know other people's experiences, what they have dealt with, to not be shy in whatever way they feel comfortable of getting feedback from different people about what their experiences are, and if they're particularly interested in specific places and programs, to really do your research. Of course, from starting to Google things to even seeing if people have contacts that are experiencing or have recently gone through these experiences and also finding people that are very open to sharing this. I think that's a very important thing because informed decisions are always a better thing. And I think the other thing that I would say is that science is beautiful, but science is hard. So whenever we make these decisions, we have to kind of be sure that this is the right scientific trajectory for us. So it has to be a science question that we're really passionate about. So even if it gets difficult, we won't feel, it's okay to feel discouraged. We're only human, but to ultimately continue to have that excitement and that thrill that even if it gets difficult, we've kind of made the right choice and this is something that we want to pursue. That has been very helpful for me. I'm a little bit stubborn. So I knew I wanted to work with animal behavior. I knew I wanted to get into mechanisms eventually. And just being stubborn that I really wanted to answer these questions has come a long way for me. And just asking and understanding as much as possible. And the last thing I would want to say is that if one is not sure, like you mentioned just earlier, short-term opportunities are important to get your feet wet. So perhaps an internship, seeing if you can collaborate with someone even remotely on a project, or of course in person would be ideal to have an exchange program or something that can give you a better sense of what the expectations are and what reality is, I would say.
You mentioned being stubborn there, and that's famously a characteristic which is perceived differently in women from men. And do you find that in your career, has it been difficult as a woman being more stubborn about things, or
Maybe
sort
a
of
little
maintaining your
bit.
direction?
Maybe a little bit. I think that stubborn is more about self-drive. I don't necessarily think I'm stubborn about feeling that I have to be right and convincing other people. That way, it's more about that I really want to do something. I usually try to make it work as much as I can. And if something doesn't work, I have the satisfaction that I did everything I could. I think that's the way I've worked on being stubborn that way. I don't know if it's the proper term, but I do understand where you're coming from. And sometimes when someone is passionate and in a way maybe stubborn about, I really want to answer this, it could be perceived differently historically in women compared to men. I could see that if we're just talking about binary terms, right? It's a little bit more complex than that. But I think for anything that hasn't been a traditional perceived role, right, for someone, it may come off a little bit different than to others, right?
You're actually like, I mean, it's not about what we were just talking about, but just to follow up on what you were saying earlier, like you used a very simple sentence that, in my opinion, is summarizing quite well the things. Science is beautiful, but science is hard. Uh, so, like, if you had to watch back to the last decade, like, what will be the new challenge that appear in research? If you had to describe them. But I mean, I guess that obviously it will be related to where you are, United States, because like we do not all face the same challenge everywhere, obviously, but I imagine that we also have some common one.
Yes, so I would say that to me, it's a very exciting time. I've mentioned this before in other opportunities where we are finally able to integrate knowledge from perhaps before we looked at behavior in a sense of my background's in behavioral ecology, but now we can tie in mechanisms and evolution. And to me, that's very exciting. Integrative work underlying animal behavior is one of the things that I find the most exciting right now, and where I think a lot of us are moving in that direction. And getting answers or even asking questions that we couldn't think about before with technology. That being said, I kind of navigate between both worlds because even though I'm a researcher in the United States, all my family and most of my loved ones are back home in Costa Rica. So I know that some technology isn't readily available, or as even financially, funding can be different in different places. So not everybody, even though it's becoming cheaper and cheaper, not everybody would have access. But one of the good things that I've noticed, and it's another exciting avenue, is that with computational workshops that are available now, and even free ones, and all these resources. And now that data is becoming more accessible worldwide, even if we can't collect some data with computational work, we could explore other databases, and that could be a way to address perhaps having access to certain data sets, and by collaborating, or data that's available for researchers to use to address some of these gaps and be able to integrate mechanistic, genomic, evolutionary, behavioral ecology, all these fields together.
Yeah, so like, I mean, you discussed like when I asked you what advice you would have for a young student who would like to maybe move towards another country now, you say that short-term experience is also one of the great things. And actually, it's something that we like to ask to PI what we are meeting, because I think it's super interesting for the student who will listen us, is that what would you research in an application of students? Like what students should put in their application, CV or cover letter, in order to sort of attract as much as possible the attention of the PI and get the opportunity?
I think one of the important things is, and this happens to all of us, we all receive a lot of emails. So I think finding a way to communicate our work, our excitement, convey our excitement, the reasons why we're interested in a particular project, but not making it very long, just, like concise and nice and easy to follow, is always very attractive for a researcher, or someone that has done the research and can follow and said, oh, I mentioned your paper, I read your paper, and these papers are something that are compelling to me because I feel aligned with X, Y, and Z questions. That is really important. I think tailoring it to really conveying the reason why this particular research experience would be important, and also how it would help them and their trajectory is very important to convey. I think sometimes we're a little bit shy, and I've noticed that some researchers maybe grab pieces of our website and put it back in the email, and that doesn't necessarily convey what a oncoming scholar could also provide to a lab, right, as part of their experience too. So I think taking the time to do a little bit of research and nailing down maybe what type of experience they want to have and how feasible it is important. I think once we put those pieces of the puzzle together, it's easier to write to someone, right? And I think now there's a couple of initiatives where they have some templates too about maybe some of these are some of the key points that you would want to address when you're cold emailing someone, cold in the sense that maybe they've never heard from you before, right? That's what the terminology would mean. Yeah.
But and would you say that at the moment, like you get more student when you are doing actually call to get a student, or you get a lot of mail from people just like randomly asking for project? Because like I guess that some student could always wonder whether like they should wait for the PI to actually put a call for a project or actually just send at any moment. So maybe it's interesting to know like what's your perspective about that?
I am very open to different avenues. So for example, at least in my experience, any type of possibility is worth exploring. Definitely if someone is very driven and wants to pursue an opportunity, I think it's fantastic to email potential PIs that align within that line of work and see what's feasible. Of course, also being connected with listservs and these things, and definitely if there's an opportunity open and it's attractive to you, please go ahead and don't never. One of the best advices I got is don't self-select. Don't say that I don't fit into this thing. If there are some commonalities to what some qualifications, even if it's not everything, it doesn't hurt to try and ask, or even apply formally. It's worth trying rather than saying, maybe I don't fit here. And it could be an opportunity that could work out. And the other thing I have seen that has been successful, and I have a personal anecdote about this, is when students can feel comfortable approaching PIs just to talk. I was at a conference in Brazil. I was very lucky. And there was a poster that caught my attention. So I went to talk to the student and we had a great conversation. And about a year and a half later, the student emailed me and said, do you remember we chatted? My program requires to have an internship outside of my country. I was wondering if there's any options available. Long story short, they came to my lab, we hit it off, they came back a second time. And just before this, we had a meeting where we're working on a manuscript together to finish off the work that he did in my lab. So that was just something that happened and he followed up and we hit it off and it was meant to be,
Yeah, but it's actually, sorry, Laure, you want to?
No, I was just saying that it's great.
Oh, yeah. But I don't know, like maybe I have a follow-up comment on this, like, because I mean, of course, like it's good to be able to enter in contact with PI during conference, but so like, what's your regard? I mean, what is your opinion regarding the current system of conference actually? Because somehow, so with ABL, it's a bit what we are trying to do to just give a more inclusive and accessible platform for everyone to just come and network. But the very truth is that a lot of conferences are quite expensive, and like for a student, it's also very complex to access it because sometimes they don't have result at the moment, or so do you have a uh, like maybe like some thought about how we could improve the system of conference, because ABL is also maybe not the best solution, so to say, because it's fully online. So like I can understand that some people really need this okay, I need to see people, I need to be in front of them for real. But like, did you participate to anything or have any thought about how it could be improved?
Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts. One of the first ones is I think now awareness is a very important thing. So, for example, something that I have proposed and some other people when we have meetings about the next venue for a conference is, for example, it's hard for people from the global south to get visas to go to certain countries. So finding a location of a country that's not as expensive and geographically and maybe visa-wise is more accessible can increase the chances. The Animal Behavior Conference was in Costa Rica in 2022, which we were very excited to have it there. And we had a lot of other people from Latin America being able to come, and that facilitated for the global south, at least from that side of the world, to be able to participate. So having awareness that location matters and could provide different opportunities is good. I've also seen initiatives for fellowships for trainees that may not have the means to do so. That's becoming more common. So it's not an ideal solution, but at least these initiatives are in place and they're gaining a lot of traction. And the other thing I've thought about is there's wonderful initiatives that maybe some trainees are not aware of, but seminar series that are online. About a year or 2 years ago, I can't remember very well, I was invited to participate in this online series, Frontiers in, is it called Social Evolution? Fine. They have it on YouTube. They open it up at the end of and they're readily available online, the talks after. And then there were like 5 or 6 people that stayed to have conversation with the speaker that they're interested in. So if a professor that you're interested in with collaborating or even getting to network with, maybe this isn't a conference, but this is a way to jump in and there's only a few people, and it would be nice to establish at least part of being in a meeting is having access to both the science, but also to be able to network. And I've seen some of these initiatives, and I've been a little bit surprised how maybe we have to do a better job of advertising. And I know this one in particular is very good about advertising, but I was a little bit surprised there weren't that many trainees taking advantage of this. And this is a smaller setting where you can kind of treat it as a conference in a way, because every 2 weeks or once a month, there's a different talk by different researchers. So you're getting the experience in a smaller setting where you could even establish strong collaborations too in the future, or connections at least.
Yeah. But I mean, I can tell you that we are meeting the same type of issues, like because we are also organizing a seminar series as well as a roundtable series.
Mm-hmm.
And it's particularly hard, even with all our effort in terms of communication, to reach so many people. I mean, we always manage to have many people watching, but the point is that since it's free events, you would always expect that you will attract way more people.
More people.
Yeah. But I mean, I imagine also that there's been a kind of people are getting tired of thing online, because like there's been this. I mean, my hypothesis is that certainly it has created a sort of PTSD because it was during COVID that it started. So like people are like, okay, it remind me too much bad memories somehow. But like I think it's getting harder and harder to attract people to go to fully online things. That's why I was asking you your opinion about this, because I think we are at a sort of crossroads in between. Maybe we need some really hybrid solution in which we have online but also in-person thing. I must say that one of my thoughts on it was maybe something that you sort of have cluster of people in different countries, and these clusters are meeting online. This way you still have this human social for real, but also like you don't have to travel, because obviously one of the main problematic with the conference is not only the visa and the price, but it's also ecologically speaking that not taking flight all the time and these type of things. But yeah, I agree with you after that it indeed exists solution and students should look up for it. But I also agree with you that sometimes communication is maybe not optimal, or I don't know, maybe it's lost in the thousand of email that everyone receives all the time.
And it's understandable, and I agree with you, right? We were kind of done with online for a while, but I think especially for at least coming from a background where I really kind of went to the United States and I didn't have a very good sense of what a PhD entailed because there wasn't that much information. I think right now it is really important, especially for those students that haven't been exposed to the expectations and the advantages and what life could be like, to really make that extra effort. The other thing that I think has been it doesn't solve, but it could be another partial solution is regional meetings, smaller settings where people connect into these breakout groups. You still have the social interactions, and within your network, perhaps someone from another region could come by, or a couple key people where you can start to establish these connections. So those that are geographically restricted, it's always easier to bring in a couple people that could act as connectors to other initiatives, and that might be a way to maybe get the social interaction with addressing maybe geographical constraints and kind of start to form these networks. That might be something that could be explored a little bit.
I think we start to see this appearing more and more, because like I will say that a lot of scientific society actually made like national branch and just like organizing one little satellite conference every year. Yeah, I agree. It's also one good strategy indeed.
So I wanted to talk about, like, you talked earlier about the like a remote internship for students maybe. And I am actually working like 100% remote because I live in Canada and I work in France. And I would ask you, like, what kind of what advice would you have for students and even for PI, like to make this feasible, like to work together but being not at the same place?
And you know, it's interesting. I love that you're asking me these questions. I don't know if I have the right answers, but I do have some thoughts. My husband and I were just talking about this. My husband, even though we're kind of similar to age, he was already in the United States, and his trajectory was he's ahead of me in trajectory. He's already tenured and, you know, a full professor, while I'm a tenure track professor right now. And we were talking how some of this can be circumstantial. Some people are very good about working remotely and connecting the dots, but I do feel that it's a little bit trickier for professors that are establishing their research projects. If everybody's remote, it's really hard to establish the group. So I think finding a balance where some group members could be in person and then you could have one or two people remote, that could work well, at least for someone that's building their research program and kind of the culture dynamics. I think that's a little bit easier in a way for more established PIs that have been in the field long term, if that makes sense. And then bringing in that establishment so the person that is remote feels that strong connection, even if geographically they're separated. I do know some assistant professors that have been extremely successful in having team members abroad. But I think one thing that facilitates that, if someone has the ability to have larger groups, maybe when it's a small group, it's harder to build community if people are kind of interspersed, right? So, and I think setting up regular meetings where people can have hybrid meetings like once a week. Okay, doesn't matter where we are, we all jump in person, or that maintaining continuity, I think would be one of the key things to be able to make something work in the long term, where the person that is away feels still like they have a community and they have a support network too, and they're kind of connected well with everything that's happening in the lab, right? I don't know if that really gets to your question as much, or any solutions, but
no, I feel it's like my feeling right now is that because I work remotely, is like the ability we have now to, with internet and Teams and all these things, we can work remotely and just talk to who we want, but at the same time we are very like isolated, like we don't see people. It's hard because we have access to people but we don't see the people, and it's like we have both, like we can work remotely, but at the same time it's also good to see people, because you can make new connection. You didn't even think about this, because when you have to talk to people, you think about this before, but sometimes you just don't think about opportunities that just came from a new people you didn't even think about. So
absolutely. And I think you hit two interesting points there. I think one thing is, I think being remote as a student is a lot harder because you need the training, and the training comes a lot with being in person and interacting with people. So I see it a little bit more challenging. It could happen, and I am sure some people have come up with creative ways, but you're kind of missing out on establishing a lab group and the lab culture that way. When someone becomes an independent researcher, they're standing on their own, right? But they still need that connection. Something that I've thought about related to that is my group, everybody's in person right now. But as part of some of the check marks that I need to have as a tenure track professor is I need to give talks and I need to go to conferences. And if someone is, and well, right now the United States is weird, so we really are not doing that much. But one of the things I thought to myself is I have to find a way where lab meeting time is sacred to us, that it's one of our priorities, because if I'm always canceling because I'm traveling or someone else has something else to do, we don't build that community. And it shouldn't matter where we are. We should really try to meet every week, at least to check in. It doesn't have to be a long meeting, to maintain that connection, even if I'm the one that's away, right? But if we don't maintain and we don't make that effort in whatever capability in person or remotely, and or then it's harder to maintain that human connection and giving each other feedback and troubleshooting together, right?
Yeah, and you also have the diversity within the students, because some students need more help than others. And sometimes it's not about being smart or not, it's just about sometimes and you just need to have a direction. Otherwise, you just go everywhere. So yeah, we need these meetings at the same time.
Yeah,
Definitely.
something that I have in my group is we meet one-on-one every week, especially the first year when someone starts in the lab. And usually we try to meet for at least half an hour. It could be an hour or two, of course. It could be check-in if someone's doing something or needs a little bit of help. It could be longer if the person needs help with something or just to touch base to see how they're doing. And then after the first year, I asked them, would you want to continue weekly, or do you prefer you need, your own space and we could do it every 2 weeks? But I feel that leaving more time between that, then it starts to get slippery where then it's 6 months and you haven't met. So we try to find the right balance that works for everybody, the ones that need more independence and kind of want to do their own thing, and perhaps the ones that need more consistent support. But having structure that can help to move forward in a good way and feel supported.
And sometimes also it could come from the students. Like I think sometimes they are afraid to ask more time or to ask more questions to the PI, and I think they should not be afraid. This is important.
Yeah, no, they should not. But I guess it's also based on the communication of the
Sure.
PI, because like I guess it's on the supervisor to somehow install something comfortable enough for the student to be sure that he can ask several times.
Yes.
But it's a complex dynamic, I guess, that you learn along the different students you have, since anyway everyone is so different that it's kind of hard to learn to be to get adaptable in a way that you are able to just react the good way for any student.
Yes, I agree. And sometimes just asking the right questions. Sometimes if I feel that somebody's shy, once in a while, it's like, is there something I could do to help you? Is this working for you? Uh, Maybe goes a long way. They can always say, oh, yeah, it's good. Or maybe I have this different. But you also want to find the right balance where a person also doesn't feel uncomfortable and get bombarded with questions. So I think it's a matter of both sides being open to this communication. And it doesn't even have to be verbal, it could be a quick message or follow up and whatever capability, but establishing what's important and what's helpful for each trainee is really important. And then a lab culture, people to discuss what type of environment overall, what type of lab culture they want to have. It goes a long way.
Because that's something that's changed in terms of the culture of how labs are organized? Because I imagine that 20 years ago it was a very different kind of environment that people were doing their research in.
It felt a little more hierarchical before, I would say, and there's still a little bit of that. I mean, clearly every group needs a leader, and then other team members that also have leadership positions. They can lead their peers, and of course, peer support, right? So there's different ways of looking at it. But I think one exciting way is to move forward in a way where mentors feel more accessible. And I think there is a big push towards that, and that we're all human. Um, and that certainly some of us have a little bit more experience than others, and that having mentors throughout your lifetime is a very normal thing. I'm very grateful for the mentors I have right now. Even though I'm faculty, I still have a bunch of mentors, and I really don't know of anyone that doesn't have a mentor in some capability, right? Even if you have been established throughout your trajectory. And I think that's becoming more normalized now, which is, to me, is very exciting. It's very encouraging. I don't know how you two feel, Alexis and Laure.
Yeah, no, I do agree that, I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's always good to anyway have someone that you can ask advice for, because like the truth is that even if like you start to have more experience, it's good to not just be narrow-minded and think that you have an answer for everything. So like just be able to ask around, even sometimes to student, I will say that, because the truth also is, what is good is to accept that students are coming with some knowledge that sometimes we do not have because they pass by another background. So I think it's always cool to, yeah, just yeah, be open and receive things from everyone.
I wanted to ask you, Floria, um, I guess you faced challenges moving from being a student, working like under someone, and then being the PI. So you are the one taking the decision. What challenges it was and how you just overcome them?
Wow, that is a very, a very good question. And I think the short answer at first is I've had experiences that has shown me in general things to consider that could work overall for everyone, such as respect, communication, openness, and things that don't work for everyone. And and I've had to do a lot of learning, and I'm still learning about this, and I've certainly made mistakes. Um, I think one of the things that has helped me as a leader, and based on even mistakes I've made in the past, is how context is important. So when you're establishing a relationship with someone, especially a trainee, it goes a long way to say, okay, let's look at this and let's talk about this. And the reason for this, it's because X, Y, and Z. I want you to be aware of this context that's important. If we look at this opportunity this way, it could be this way. If it goes this other way, and I want you, you don't have to necessarily agree with me. I'm just going to provide advice. And the reason why I'm providing advice is because of X, Y, and Z. So just giving a little bit of that and explaining things can avoid some misunderstandings. It's not that I want to tell you what to do. It's just that based on experience and even things that maybe sometimes I tell them, if this is not helpful to you, you can ignore the advice. But looking back, I wish somebody would have told me this. And that is the reason why I'm telling you this. Don't agree with me. You don't have to necessarily go in this direction. I just want you to be aware of this. And there's been times where perhaps I haven't been as clear of what the reasons are for providing advice or context, and that can lead to misunderstandings. So that is something that I'm still working with and finding a way. One of the biggest challenges is how can you become a leader that is effective for different personalities and for different needs? And that is a challenge that I try to take as seriously as possible. And I can tell you I've learned a lot of things of what not to do so far. And that is also important feedback to have. And then I ask people to tell me, is this working for you? But again, it's an ongoing personal journey for me. And then when I see students doing well, generally I ask them, how are you doing? And how's this working for you? And what's right? And I'm hoping I don't come off as nosy, but sometimes I tell them, I think you're doing so well. I would love to see what works for you, if maybe it can work for other students. But I think part of this comes with opening ourselves up that what works for us is not going to work for somebody else. And that has been a whole learning curve for me
And
as a person.
did you so far just learn like along the different situations that you've met, or you also participated to training or workshop on leadership and mentorship? Because it's true that I realized recently watching the catalog of workshop in my department that it exists and that there's not much communication about it, and that I think many of us we never really go to these kind of things. But like, did you already participate to one of them? Do you have an opinion about it?
I think there is, again, a lot more awareness and initiatives and guidance from pedagogical perspectives to team leadership and strategies about how to collaborate. There are more resources available. Even if you Google them, there are things now, even if your
Yeah,
institution isn't as aware. And I think this is an ongoing thing of what's the right balance for everybody. Personally, I think since I've done a lot of field work with trainees and I've done field courses, that kind of throws you in there already to see
yeah,
how people do in circumstances like, I don't know, they're feeling sick or they're homesick or today's experiment didn't work. So I think I've been lucky with some of these challenges to try to learn how to do it. But I would have certainly benefited, and I think I still can, of course, of learning techniques and just different perspectives of how to be able to understand trainees' needs differently and how to
yeah.
communicate certain things like expectations too.
Hmm.
So I think it is an ongoing thing, and um, I'm encouraged by more resources now, but
Yeah.
yeah, in the
Yeah,
past there
sometimes
wasn't much of
no,
that,
no, and
right?
sometimes life school is also working well. But like, I mean,
But yeah,
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 yeah, no, no, for
yeah.
sure. And actually, like, I mean, you talked about field, which is a perfect transition to my next question. And I think it could be interesting for more the early career researcher who are still struggling into knowing if they want to stay in academia or not, because maybe they are afraid to sort of lose this passion of doing things, scientifically speaking. Like, do you still manage to go on the field and to have enough time to practice science, so to say, like bench science, let's say?
So when I started to transition into this assistant professor position, I had some time to think about it. And maybe it is my animal behavior training, but I love to see what other people do. I mean, not in a weird, creepy way, but what works for them. And
Yeah.
I've seen that some PIs are they've kind of become more administrative. They do
Hmm.
their grant writing and they direct people, but they don't do bench work anymore.
Yeah.
And other people are very involved, and some people are in the middle. So to me, it's always been very interesting to see how that has worked for different people and according to their needs, right? And
Yeah.
even some of the challenges, right? Somebody could be a parent to young children, so they really
Yeah.
have to figure out how much time they have. And I decided that I don't want to be that removed PI, but that comes with challenges, right? Because that means that if I'm doing some bench work myself, then I'm not spending time in other things that I should, right? So it's a
Yeah.
fine balance. I love field work, so it's becoming a little bit more challenging, not going to lie. But even this field season, I went out for a couple times. I call myself Uber Wasp. So once in a while, my trainees can't go to something, and I ended up going and collecting wasps, and I bring them back. And then the team kind of takes over and processes them and does the research with them. That's a way for me to be connected and go out in nature and see, okay, the season's like this, the phonology is this way, the insects are this way, so I'm still connected. Um, I still try to do a little bit of bench work, but I am aware that particularly under these circumstances and what we're experiencing with funding in the United States, my efforts might need to pivot into finding alternative sources of funding, because ultimately, if I don't find the resources for my team and I'm responsible for them, I can't provide opportunities. So these are conversations, internal conversations I'm having, where I can still be connected enough that I can provide good advice. So when an experiment's not working, at least I'm not removed from things, but that I need to move on because I need to provide with what my team needs, right? So it's an ongoing thing right
But I mean,
now.
it's good to hear that. I think for some people to hear that you still manage to find a balance between this bench field time and I mean, of course, like I think it's a very period related thing because, like you say, when you are searching for funding, very logically you will need to spend more time on this than on experiments themselves. But like it doesn't mean that maybe once in the year you will not be able to at least provide some time for this. And I think it's good for people to hear.
Yeah, but it's tricky. It's
tricky.
No,
I'm sure it is.
Do you get to go to the field trips? Because I saw on the website that your students go to the Galapagos and to Ecuador and so on. Do you get to go along and do the teaching on those as well?
Well, actually, I'm the director for a study abroad program, so I do the administrative duties, but I've been lucky enough where we haven't been able to run the program recently, especially with recent challenges. But in 22 and 2023, I was also faculty. This is for undergraduate researchers. So each professor goes in for 3 weeks and gets to spend time and mentor or teach the students. So I was lucky enough to be able to be involved in that. There might be some moments where I just have to just put on my director hat and I don't get to go and other faculty get to go. But I try to at least stay in touch with so I can provide relevant information and then also make decisions that are informed, right, with what's happening. If I don't visit a site, it's kind of hard for me to see how the students are doing on site and some of the things that they might need. So yeah, I would say overall I've been lucky enough that I'm still able to, in some form, participate in the majority of the activities in the lab. And that gives me perspective about how to lead too, if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very curious because I'm working with birds and my field work is very like, just have to go outside and find my bird and that's it, and just do my behavioral test and it's easy, quite easy. But like, I have no clue about what is a typical field day for you working with wasps?
Well, I think it depends. Right now, we decided to pivot to this local project, which is the social wasps and their parasite, and trying to find the mechanisms underlying parasitic manipulation, because the proximity and being a local project allows us to do a combination of field and lab experiments. And also with undergraduate researchers, it allows them to be able to participate, while some study abroad experiences might be financially not feasible for some people. But there's a trade-off, right? I'm not in the middle of the forest all day like I was before. More recently, we have day trips or overnight trips where we go and we have to time things that it's sunny if we want foraging insects, or it needs to be cold and later in the day to be able to collect whole colonies to bring them back to the lab or observations. So there's shorter efforts that can go from a full day trip to 1 or 2 days. If, for example, we had a trip to Pennsylvania a while ago, which is another state that it's about 4 hours away. So we had a couple field trips, so it's all day. We were looking for infected wasps. So we really drove around a lot. We would get out, we would look for them. Sometimes we'd walk around, but it's a little bit more feasible for the type of research we want to have. Well, in the past, I would be off the grid in the Galapagos or in the Solomon Islands, for a while. But given the type of research we're doing, we've had to pivot. And that's why there are more day trips now, what we're doing.
which is more accessible for students. Day trips, it's usually like less expensive, and especially if they need to go back to their family, because sometimes students, they have already families. So
yeah. And that is an advantage for sure. Or even when we have a couple local populations, we coordinate that 2 team members go to this patch that is like 3 kilometers away. And we have a safety system where usually at least 2 people are collecting together. Everybody knows where they are. They report each other, and they can go and do some fun field work for the afternoon or for the day. And they're close enough where they can, if somebody else from the team needs to jump in or needs help, someone is available. So that has worked out well for us. And the study system we're working on is amicable to that. Once in a while, we have to go to another city and its surroundings that are 2 hours away. So those are longer days because it's 4 hours of only driving. So we start very early and we finish very late. So that's a whole day kind of production thing, but they're always fun and they're always worth it. Yeah.
So like we're arriving soon to the end of the podcast, and like I had a question that I really wanted to go with. Like, so I mean, you say several times that situation in United States at the moment is a bit weird, and I mean, let's be honest, I heard several times during my career that if you want a position, United States is the place to be. And I think from your internal perspective, it will be very interesting to know if it is still true, if I mean, I don't say here that we cannot encourage people to apply or anything, but it's just to know like what is actually the situation. Is it like is there still some good opportunity at the moment, or is it more complex?
I think the important thing for people to consider are maybe some of the current circumstances. There is more reduced funding than usual possibilities. However, some researchers are putting out calls to, if you need, if you're interested in a PhD position in X, Y, and Z. So I would say the opportunities are there, but they may be less than usual. I think the other important thing is, as an international student and being myself a former international student, is that if you do a project in the United States, you might have to stay in the United States for a little bit until certain things are sorted out. There might not be that feasibility of coming in and out or more international components. So I think that part is important, and we're hopeful that we'll have a better assessment about what's happening. But there's certainly opportunities still. And I would really encourage people to reach out to those PIs and ask the specific circumstances under their recruiting and what they can provide and what support and what they know, and to trainees that are in that lab, especially if there's international ones that can provide that perspective, because there are some commonalities, but there might be some very important, unique circumstances for each project, for each group, for which city, given that the United States is such a big place. There might, each state, the way I see it, is it's its own unique thing. So it might be really important to be very thorough in understanding as much as possible about what specific circumstances are about. So I wouldn't discourage, of course, but I would say to really, really do thorough research as much as possible about the context surrounding each opportunity right now.
Yeah, thanks a lot. I think it's a great insight actually for people who are maybe like applying at the moment or planning to apply in United States. I don't know, Laura and David, maybe you have extra question or yeah,
I have
Laura,
one,
go ahead.
maybe.
Yeah, for sure.
I wanted to ask you, Floria, do you have in your field of work, like in the subjects you want to study, do you have a dream, like going somewhere to study some species or a subject in particular, or just meet someone you want to work with?
I
a great
love
question,
this question. Well, something that I'm very excited about with the host parasite system that we work with, and something that my collaborator and I are thinking about is to establish a host parasite kind of network of scientists where we can compare manipulation in behavior and physiology, convergence and parallel mechanisms. That is something that I'm very excited about. So if anyone that's listening wants to talk about this, that would be my dream. There are a couple of scientists I haven't had the chance to talk to them as much in person, and a couple of them aren't with us anymore. So there are some people that I admire that are not with us anymore that I would have loved to have a conversation with them. But I think overall, I'm always very encouraged to have the opportunity to talk to people with different perspectives. And yes, I have a couple of professors that I haven't had a chance, or scientists, but I haven't had the chance to work. But I also have the dream of providing the right environment to people that align with what I can offer, if that makes any sense. And that I could do as much as I can. And I am very well aware that I may not be the right mentor for everybody, but just that life helps us find each other. I think that's one of the dreams that I have.
That's very nice.
Good dreams.
Yeah, very nice. So yeah, like to finish more on something like we will go through a rapid fire question game. So like the idea is that I am just going with question and you have to reply as fast and as short as possible.
I hope I don't get in trouble. Okay.
No worries. If I see that the answer is really terrible, I will cut it. No.
Okay, I am Latina. I have to warn you. So sometimes we speak our mind, right?
I mean, it's always good to speak your mind. Like, I don't think that any question could put you in such a uncomfortable position. So, okay, I will start now. So, like, if you had to explain your research to a 10 years old in one sentence.
I like to study how bugs are hackers of other bugs.
That's nice.
I like this.
Looking back, what would you tell to your PhD postdoc self?
Really do your homework before starting a PhD.
That sounds like a great advice. What's the biggest misconception people have about your research field?
I think that I only do behavior isolated without other things in tow.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
like integrative research a lot.
So like you think that they are thinking that you just do behavior and that's it.
Or maybe that I find myself being a jack of all trades more than a specialist. I like a bunch of different things.
I see. So if you weren't I think we have the answer of this. If you weren't a researcher, what would you be doing now?
I like this question.
I would have an animal shelter. I love rescue animals. So I would have probably a farm full of rescue animals, animals without legs, animals that are old, animals that need homes that nobody wants. I would do
the same.
I thought that you will say veterinary, since like at the beginning you say that it was your go-to. Yeah, so what's your favorite animal? Doesn't have to be your animal model.
Octopus.
Octopus,
They're
okay.
so smart, and the gene editing thing is out of control. And I'm sorry to say this, but nobody should eat them.
It's true. So if you had a superpower, what would you change in research right now? In academia, let's say.
Equality.
Okay.
I want everyone to have equal opportunities.
Yeah. Can you give us one word to describe your approach to science?
MacGyver.
MacGyver, okay. Coffee or tea while working?
Coffee, 100%.
And like if you had to come back like really when you were in Costa Rica before starting research, would you do the same choice still?
Do I get to change anything, or it's 100% the same trajectory?
I mean, like, no, like actually, would you change anything to this trajectory?
Oh goodness. I think I would do two things. First, I would do my homework better about what I'm getting into. And two, I would help myself be more confident as a student.
Okay. That's a great answer. You see, like it was not that terrible, and you are not. You did not say anything that can be taken to like against you. And so, like to finish this discussion, like I would like to ask if you have any recommendation. It can be a book, it can be a paper, it can be pretty much any type of format. It doesn't have to be science. It can also be something else. But like any recommendation for the audience.
So, something that has been inspiring to me is finding ways that we feel we belong in science. And there are two books that have made me feel that I can belong. One is Hidden Figures, which is the one that the movie is based off, but the book is fantastic. And the other one is, oh my goodness, the Kathleen Carico, the mRNA vaccine.
Let me try to help you.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I'm kind of forgetting the book, but she has had a very non-traditional trajectory in science. Let me look at it very quickly.
It's always hard for me to remember the name of books or movies.
It's called Breaking Through My Life in Science.
Okay, Breaking Through My Life in Science.
Kathleen Carico. I think that those of us that at some point we have felt that we don't fit the traditional mold of science, and those boundaries are getting easier to break. Those books gave me a lot of hope that the way I am makes me feel I belong as much as others. And that was an important kind of conversation I had to have with myself a couple of years ago. So those books to me have been a fantastic resource of self-awareness, and also that life and science doesn't have to be necessarily that linear.
Very nice. A very nice proposition. I'm sure that people will like this recommendation. So thanks, Floria, for having been with us today, like, and from your insight and like, I mean, sharing your life path with us. So like, I think we can remember that, guys, you have to do your homeworks. It's important. And yeah, like it was really interesting to see also like how the fact that persistence and like to never give up and just like go for what you want, and like it can really help you in your career. So I mean, I have to also remind that you will be plenary at the ABL conference, the 13th and 14th of November. So today we talk a lot about your life beyond research, but I'm sure that it will also give a lot of desire to people to hear more about your research itself. And so I invite everyone to come at the conference. It's a free event, so like there's really no excuse to not attend, and you will learn more about the research of Floria. Thanks, Floria, a lot for being with us today.
Thank you. I want to say gracias. Thank you in Spanish for this wonderful initiative and the opportunity to get to talk to you. And yes, we will encourage on our side and advertise the meeting, because you really are doing a wonderful initiative and we're highly appreciative of it. And thank you for spending time with me today.
Meet the PI is presented by Animal Behavior Live, an inclusive international platform bringing together animal behavior researchers across the world to discuss the latest research and question our academic practices. To know more, check our website at animalbehavior.live.